Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us here today. We are so excited to share Brightspot's perspective on what's shaping meetings and incentive travel as we head into 2026. This session isn't just about hype or predictions for the sake of predictions. It's about what's actually changing, what's not, and what smart leaders should do next. My name is Katie Thedford. I am the Senior Marketing Manager here at Brightspot, and I am so excited to introduce our speakers to you today. We have Mike May, our Executive Chairman, Haley Jump, our Director of Events, and Michelle Crosby, one of our account executives. Mike will actually celebrate 25 years with Brightspot this summer and has been named top 25 most influential people in the incentives industry by Incentive Magazine. He was also chairman of the trustee board for IRF, where a lot of our research has been pulled from today. Haley is also very active in IRF and is on the events committee and just celebrated her 10th Brightspot anniversary. And last but certainly not least, Michelle has been with Brightspot for 5 years and is a culinary enthusiast. For anyone that follows her on social media, they certainly get a good idea of the excitement she creates in the kitchen. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Mike to get us started.
Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Really excited about this. What we have done is curated the best of the best trends. There's certainly no shortage of trends, but we've gone through and curated them of what we really think is making sense out there on Main Street. We've looked at our 75 clients. We've gotten thoughts from our 100 employees. We also have research from IRF and SITE, which stands for Society of Incentive Travel Excellence. Those are the two leading research bodies for incentive travel, but also a lot of the media magazines like North Star and Skift are doing fabulous jobs of gathering trends from their research or from their interview of meeting planners around the industry. And then the last two, we have some surveys from American Express and Freeman from corporate leaders, but you'll even hear us mention others like UK-based publications to bring in a global view. So we're really excited to share what we have today, but what we're going to do is not just share the trend passively, but we're going to add active to-dos that we think everybody ought to do. So the reason this matters, I think all of us that are in the space know that demand is still strong. I read an American Express study that said optimism was at a 5-year high. But costs are going up faster than budgets. Budgets are going up, but there's a lot. I think the key word we would have used for prior years was volatility, but for this year, we would probably use the word selectivity. And what we're seeing is there's less tolerance for waste or fluff. The ability to just say, because we've always done that, doesn't cut it anymore. So expectations are higher than ever. So hopefully what we share here will be good to help you in what you do in your day-to-day job. I love this quote from Michael Dominguez. It's partly cloudy. There's some chaos, a lot of uncertainty, but overall we're doing okay. He made this comment in November. Michael is one of the foremost industry experts. If you ever get a chance to hear him speak, you should. He probably speaks twice a month on the overall industry outlook for hospitality, hotels, meetings, and events. So you could get an MBA quality education in hospitality and events just from following his webinars and his industry speeches. So here's our agenda. We're going to talk about those macro forces that are shaping both meetings and incentive travels, the trends. But as I said, we also want to give you clear, actionable to-dos. I will say now, we'll also probably say it at the end, everything we're going to share here is on our website in the form of a blog that talks about these trends and to-dos. I would encourage you to access that. It has a lot of the links to underlying research. You could put together a pretty effective PowerPoint deck for your senior management just off of our blog and the research that's in it. Okay, so we're going to split up. First, we're going to talk about macro trends that affect both meetings and incentive travel. And then we're going to dive deeper separately into meetings and travel. But this is the first one that affects both incentive travel and meetings.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, confidence holds and scrutiny is on the rise. Planners are optimistic, but approvals are taking a lot longer. American Express Global Business Travel reported that 85% of event professionals heading into this year are optimistic. However, senior leaders want clarity on why an event exists, not just that it exists. This isn't recession fear, it's decision friction. Every event should have a simple, concise explanation tied directly to a business goal. If you can't explain the why in one or two sentences, it will be a struggle to get approval. So the to do here is be prepared to prepare a concise CFO ready explanation tied directly to your business outcomes.
Very good. Michelle, I'm sure all of us know firsthand that hotel rates and airfares are going up. All of the research studies, whether it's media or groups like IRF and SITE, are saying the same thing, that the primary pressure points are on hotel and air. A lot of that is driven not just by group travel, but leisure travel. People are vacationing more, as well as transient business travel. Even though we all spend a lot of time behind screens and online, there's still a lot of transient business travel out there. So that's driving, that combination is a trifecta that's affecting both hotel and airfare. I saw a great quote in the IRF trends that just came out, which, by the way, Brightspot sponsored that, which shows our passion for this topic, that we put our money into sponsoring that IRF paper. But they had a quote that said the ability to do more with less is simply gone. And I would concur. I think we've been able to make tweaks as costs have increased coming out of the pandemic, but the ability to just make small tweaks is gone. Now we're really having to look at any structural changes. We did add on this slide, not just that inflation sustains, but I saw a couple studies that were encouraging, that it said it could be starting to subside. There was a study by North Star, a study by Merritt's, that predicted a 2 to 4% increase in hotels. Now, Michael Dominguez and others have talked about larger inflation increases in rooms, but that's primarily in the luxury space. And what we're seeing overall in the hospitality industry is that occupancy is starting to soften just a little bit, but hotels are not backing off their rate. They're holding their rate because labor is still high. So our recommendation here is to cut quietly in low visibility areas and protect the moments that matter to attendees. Now, one of the things that would be the follow-up to that is, Mike, what are those low visibility areas? And some are saying could be decor, maybe it's certain production elements, or anything that seems redundant in the program, but you would need to look deeply in your program to figure out what those are. And I believe Haley's going to have some more tips for us shortly.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so the next trend is, and I'm going to add a parenthesis here, air travel is still tighter than a middle seat. I think we've seen this over the past couple of years, but anyone, especially that's flown in the last year, has felt this one firsthand. Air travel is tighter than ever. Flights are full, routes are limited, and there's very, very little margin for error. Demand is strong, but supply hasn't been able to keep up, unfortunately, due to aircraft shortages, maintenance constraints, or packed planes. And that means even a small disruption can cascade quickly. So from a planning perspective, this creates real risk. Weather delays, equipment issues, or misconnections don't just cause inconvenience. They can really derail arrivals, compress agendas, or in some cases force entire programs to shift a day, which often equates to more cost, as we know. So we recently hosted a large incentive in Cancun, and as the large winter storm that wreaked havoc on most of the U.S. plowed through the states, we were having to work with our air partner to rebook over 200 people to come in 1 to 2 days earlier to avoid getting delayed or canceled and not being able to actually attend the trip. So the takeaway here isn't to panic, it's preparation and having a contingency plan in place to really address those issues if they arise.
Haley?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
You've, well, I thought you were winding down. Sorry. Uh, what I think is interesting is those of us that are planners travel a lot. So we probably have elite status. So we're not as sensitive to this because if our flight gets canceled, we get rebooked with higher priority. But if our attendees lack elite status, they're going to be at the bottom of the list, and it may require 5 or 6 successive flights to get the rest of the group back on track into the destination.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair, Mike. I mean, that's really important why planning is key and trying to, have those contingency plans in place. So really the to do there is just to make sure that we're building in those buffers, validating airlift early, and really preparing attendees for flexibility, especially if they're not well traveled, especially if we know that they may not have those statuses. I think, over communicating what could happen is really important. So all right, so the next trend we are seeing is the value engineering era. And really what that means is as planners, we are now editors in 2026. So everyone has cut hard cost. To Mike's point, does that mean scaling back on gifting or decor or perhaps even changing the length of the program? But what now after those hard costs have already been cut? So every line item must really justify itself. This requires creativity along with negotiation. To do this, knowing your attendees matters so that creative ideation is based on their expectations and not designed around the stakeholders or executives. Value engineering and the previous trend on cost inflation really go hand in hand. So to reiterate, spend where attendees notice and save where they don't. One quick example that I have from an upcoming incentive trip in the Dominican Republic for a group that really loves to spend time socializing. They love to have their beverages and spend time together, having fun. We had 4 hours of complimentary bar service for the awards dinner. And during planning this year, we realized that looking back at previous years, really that awards dinner only lasted about 3 hours. So we thought creatively where it matters the most to attendees, and we were able to negotiate and work with the hotel to move that complimentary bar hour to their after party. So, something that we already had planned, but we also were able to realize those cost savings and give the attendees what matters. So the to do here is spend where attendees notice and save where they don't.
Okay. So those were the macro trends that we said cover both meetings and incentive travel. So it was a great summary of strong demand, high optimism, but budget pressures, and as Haley told us, tight air travel. Now we're going to shift to meetings. So things like sales kickoffs, user conferences, training meetings, product launches. And we'll dive a little bit deeper and maybe into some of the nuances of those. Okay, so any list about anything with meetings would require a touch point on AI. And if you were to go to our blog on trends and to-dos, you'd actually find that we have three points in that blog about the impact of AI. So 3 separate. So this slide is a 3-in-1. The first one is that live events are becoming the antidote to AI. And one of the most fascinating quotes I saw all year came from the billionaire and Shark Tank investor Mark Cuban, who talked about the downstream effects of AI by saying within the next 3 years, there'll be so much AI, particularly AI video, that people won't know what they hear or see if it's real or not. And he predicted, this is the key part, that there will be an explosion of face-to-face events, engagement, and jobs. So I think all of us in the industry found that quote to be very fascinating from a smart business person outside of our space. But the second point on AI is AI should be used backstage for efficiencies, but not on stage. That should be human. Skift even called it an ethical issue if companies are using AI for on-stage content. And then Freeman, that primarily works in the trade show and exhibit space, did a study that said live events are the key trust, maybe the most trusted source of information and connection. So I thought that was great. And then AI is really empowering a lot of personalization. One of our employees made a comment that everybody's moving from pilot to production with personalization. And then in the past, what we did was one size fits all. Today, we're at one size fits some, but the next phase of growth for us will be one size fits one. So I thought that was great. So our to-dos are to be authentic, use AI as a helper, but not a voice, add that human interaction, and then use those time savings to add personalization.
So along those same lines of personalization and one size fits some and one size fits one, really the next trend we're looking at is attendees as co-curators. So most delegates are no longer passive recipients. They really expect agency over how they spend their time. So faster pacing, interactive sessions, and built-in flexibility are replacing rigid agendas and long general sessions. You'll probably start to see, if you haven't already, more formats like the unconferences and build your own agendas to help reflect this shift in power from the planner to the attendee. So the to-do here is to offer modular agendas, optional tracks, and that intentional white space. Oh, and then this trend. As a planner, I think we all feel this very, very deeply in our souls. Shrinking planning windows has been a trend that we've been seeing over the past few years, but it's just as strong this year. Slower approvals and faster competition are compressing timelines and increasing risk. Just-in-time planning is becoming more and more common, but it increases risk and stress on the planners. We have to remember and tell our stakeholders, delays don't save money, they cost money, quality, and sanity. So really the to-do here is to push, push, push leadership for quicker decisions to protect cost and quality. It's for their own good.
That is so true, Haley. So Europe is pulling sustainability forward. Sustainability still matters to planners, leadership, and attendees. And when it starts driving up costs or changing the attendee experience in noticeable ways, many programs pull back to what can be done without a budget hit. Where this really gets interesting is in Europe. Sustainability isn't just a values conversation anymore. It's becoming a compliance requirement. With the EU Green Deal and new reporting rules, large EU-based companies are now required to formally disclose their environmental and social impact. And that pressure doesn't stop at the corporate level. These reporting requirements are expected to ripple through the entire meetings and events ecosystem, especially around indirect or value chain emissions. This means that suppliers who can provide clear sustainability data are going to be easier to work with as clients prepare for more detailed reporting, especially in the short time frame of timelines that we're seeing for decision making. There may also be a shift underway that was noted by UK-based C&IT. Wellness and sustainability are still present, but they are no longer the primary focus. They've settled behind two bigger priorities: managing budgets and delivering a high-quality, authentic experience. That said, we're still seeing strong momentum around the easy wins, things like waste reduction, locally sourced food and beverage, and experiences that positively impact local communities that continue to resonate because they're meaningful and manageable. So the to-do here is go green where it's meaningful, but don't force it at the expense of the experience.
Okay, great. Great commentary, Michelle and Haley. So now we're going to switch from meetings over to incentive travel. Certainly some of the things we talked about, like trust, personalization, design experience, and intentionality, will also apply to incentive travel. But we're going to dive a little deeper because sometimes incentive travel has greater scrutiny because the budget per person for the event is higher, and it's meant to be a reward and recognition experience for top achievers. So it often gets a little more scrutiny. So we're going to look at the trends and the to-dos here for incentive travel.
Thanks, Mike. So I think this trend sort of all encompassing a lot of the topics we've already talked about, to your point, Mike. But what we're seeing is while the value of incentive remains strong, optimism is softening. Business gets tougher each year, as we know, with cost pressures, global instability, and slow decision making, and that's really raising planner stress levels. So concerns around rising cost and pressures to deliver more with less are intensifying, particularly as trends indicate that the scope of each event is growing. The ability to do more with less is simply gone, and small tweaks are no longer possible. So that means that larger trade-offs are often required. just a quick example that I have right now for a program that we have going to Prague this spring. They really love a wow offsite event. And each year for their incentive, this year we're doing one at the Palace near Prague Castle. But in order to ensure that event goes off and really offers that experience, we had to find a trade-off and we had to offer reduced class of service on airfare. So the to-do here is focus on that emotional impact, not scale.
So new places gain momentum. Did you guys know that almost 70% of trip winners are seeking destinations they haven't experienced before? Top achievers acknowledge they would be more motivated to win if the trip was to a new to them destination. The planner paradox is not only the challenging pursuit of a new destination, but that destination must also include incentive quality tourism support, direct air access, top tier accommodations, and strong DMC partners. The novelty is still expected, but without excessive risk. Perhaps a good alternative is to revisit a past popular destination in a brand new way. For example, I'm working with one of our clients to reimagine Cancun, Mexico, a popular destination their group has experienced multiple times. But this time, we're going to do it in a new and elevated way. Our focus will be on more intentional micro moments, such as sunrise sound healing and cenote swims, private access to archaeological sites, curator-led museum experiences, and chef collaborations of regional tasting menus and pop-up dining experiences combined with local storytelling. This goes way beyond the typical resort buffets and experiences. So the key to do here, change the setting and intention, maybe not the destination.
Michelle, this one is really fascinating to me because sometimes these trends repeat year over year for about 3 years, but this one is really a brand new one that people want to go somewhere new. And as an example of the paradox you described, just yesterday I was talking to somebody that was leaving today for a leisure trip to Belize, and he was asking, is that something we do much in our business? And I use the term, does it have incentive quality travel infrastructure? And can it handle a surge of 100 people all at once for dinner event, or transportation to offsite?
Exactly.
So while newer is really great, the challenge that those of us on the planning side feel. I also remember when Cuba first opened up, and we got a lot of requests for
Yeah.
Cuba. And I'm like, Cuba's, would be very interesting, but is everybody ready to go back to the 1950s? So, but I do love this one. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is a great segue into this. It's almost like we planned the segue here to this next trend where authenticity replaces generic luxury. This theme has been repeated in recent years, but it's still just as strong. With generational shifts in attendee expectations, we're seeing a lot more craving for authenticity and genuine connection to the destination rather than open bars and luxury dining. Younger travelers crave local, experiential, and culturally rooted programs, not generic five-star routines. So from destination and hotels, to Michelle's point, to entertainment and activities, to gifting, to food and beverage, it influences every aspect of incentive program design. This also goes back to the value engineering trend and the importance of curating moments based on your attendees' expectations. So the to-do here is swap one typical element for a local story-rich experience.
Hey, this trend is one of those repeated. 2 years ago, IRF came out with a study on attendee preferences for incentive travel, which was a fascinating study. They didn't survey meeting planners. They actually sort of surveyed trip winners and trip participants and those that could earn trips and what would be most meaningful to them. And one of the things that was a real big surprise is ample free time to relax was the number one most important quality. And for planners and corporations, it felt a little bit like a get out of budget jail free card because, as Rudy, our CEO, says, free time is free for the budget. So it felt like a real win-win to let people enjoy a five-star resort instead of busing them off to an activity, but it also helped the budget. So, but it is interesting because everybody is so over-programmed in their professional life, their personal life, they're stretched thin, and people just want flexibility, and even the flexibility becomes part of the award. And I recently saw a quote from, I think it was the president of Hilton, who used a term he called whycation, which was new to me. And he said people are traveling with purpose, whether that's to reconnect, recharge, or rediscover. And he called it the whycation, which really could tie to a lot of the things we've talked about. What is the why behind the incentive trip, the meeting, and making sure that all of the budget and the design of the program aligns with that why. So our to-do here would be to avoid over-programming and insert free time.
Well, this is something that's taken off recently. It is the wellness and zero proof hospitality. A lot of the personalization is kind of going in this direction, we've noticed recently. And long gone are the booze cruise style incentive trips. Attendees are now expecting alcohol-free options readily available. The CNIT incentive report recommends that wellness-led itineraries, alcohol-free mixology sessions, and more inclusive social formats, and incorporating all those as you plan your next incentive trip. Incorporating these wellness initiatives signals that your organization values its people beyond productivity. It underscores that their holistic well-being is a corporate priority. Many companies already include wellness as a foundational pillar as part of their organizational DNA. By aligning meeting and incentive design with that ethos and considering the demographics of your attendees, you can craft experiences that resonate on a personal level while reinforcing your own company's brand values. The societal change away from heavy alcohol consumption is actually being significantly fueled by Gen Z, which has higher rates of teetotalism than previous generations. In fact, alcohol consumption is at a 90-year low, with only 54% of US adults saying they drink alcohol. Meanwhile, wellness is soaring, especially among younger generations and aging baby boomers. Zero proof, low proof, and wellness forward experiences are no longer niche, they are expected. So, the to do here, treat alcohol free offerings as a premium.
Hey, Haley, we didn't rehearse this, but what's the longest number of hours you've seen for an open bar?
The longest, I mean, I've seen 4 is about the max because then it almost treads into danger zone territory. But 4, I see 4 quite a bit. So,
I think I remember seeing a construction company that had something like a 6-hour bar.
wow,
And
yeah.
I was just like, how can you guys do that? So they're going against the trend of the younger generation. So, okay, we're gonna, I think, transition now to what leaders are doing. So we'll kind of summarize this. And here would be the playbook that we would give you. Start with purpose, or Simon Sinek might say, start with why. Haley talked to us about being an editor, not just a producer. So look at your goals. Protect what attendees really feel. And I think we probably have to get out of our way and not just what's meaningful to us as planners, not what's most meaningful to the CEO, but what's most meaningful to the audience that we're trying to motivate. Design for trust in this AI world, add HI, human interaction. Make personalization selective. I think personalization could be exhaustive at times, and we could really get bogged down in it, but it is a worthy challenge to try to tackle. Design with less margin for error, especially in the air constraint area. And then choose the right format, especially in meetings. Maybe it's not the biggest one. There's been a shift towards smaller meetings. And just caution that we're not doing rinse and repeat. And maybe that comes full circle back to the start with purpose and why that we said at the top. Let's see, you can get more. I mentioned a few times our full blog. We have a link here. It has some things that we haven't talked about, like micro events or a fascinating section about the attendee organizer perception gap that applies especially with business meetings and trade shows where the organizers think one thing is the wow moment. Attendees are telling them a different thing. And by the way, for the attendees, it's usually networking and education that is the meaningful part to them, or even things like drones replacing fireworks is in our blog. So take a look at that. It's a lot of great information that you could use for your management.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. So that does wrap up our trends and takeaways today, but we'd love to hear from you guys and open up Q&A. So the bottom of your screen, there should be a little Q&A box that you can click into and type in your questions. As you guys are sending in your questions, oh, forgive me. I do want to point out that we have the second part in our series covering channel and sales contests tomorrow. So we'll go deeper into how incentives specifically drive partner behavior and channel performance. We'll explore what's working with distributors, dealers, and resellers in today's tighter environment. So if you guys want to join us for our second part in our series tomorrow, feel free to scan the QR code on your screen, grab your little cell phones, and be sure to join us for part 2. So with that, I will go ahead and open up Q&A. Give me just a second to get everything pulled back up here. All right. So the first question we have is, what areas are companies trimming budgets?
I can take that one. I think we talked very organically about some ideas throughout the entire webinar, but just some top things that come to my mind. Cutting back on gifting budgets in one way is one way to easily reallocate your budget. According to the IRF 2026 trends report, planners could focus on one impactful wow gift versus multiple smaller gifts. So that's one way to still really create that wow experience by, maybe trimming the budget a bit. Another idea is cutting back on decor or using decor. So, is that, shifting florals from the welcome event to use at your hospitality suite throughout the week, or utilizing in-house linens and really building your decor, around those options, or maybe using modular branding pieces like brandable stackable cubes that you could use at hospitality, you could use at the welcome. So, getting creative with decor and how you could reuse that. And then just one other idea is, especially for domestic meetings, is on transportation. You could use looping shuttles to the airport versus dedicated vehicles per flight, especially if the group is well traveled, and especially if you know their behaviors and they often jump in a taxi or Uber instead of taking transportation. So those are just some quick ideas off the top of my head.
Hey, Katie,
Awesome.
I have a question, but I don't want to type it in. And it maybe
Go
follows up the
ahead.
opposite of that budget, because earlier Haley talked about protecting the emotional impact of the program. So to Michelle and Haley, I'm curious with your clients, what are those things that you see have the highest emotional impact that people ought to prioritize? And I'm sure it's different for every client.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I had a few clients last year that even during it was, they interwove it into their meetings where they had places or sections during the breaks where you could write a postcard to your family members. And they weren't like at an incentive trip, they were at a meeting, but it was a multi-day meeting and it was part of like a wellness kind of station where they had smoothies and things like that was more energizing and life-giving to them. Plus, they brought in the element of family, or they could make I think it was friendship bracelets for, either their kids or their spouses. And like I said, the postcards, and like it was just kind of one of those things that it kind of breaks up the monotony of the meeting, or maybe brings it more to a human level. So I've kind of been seeing those little micro moments that kind of are very inexpensive but have a meaningful impact. And they got really high remarks on their conference evaluations.
That's great,
Love it.
Michelle. Yeah, very creative ideas. I think along those lines, I think looking for those micro moments, but a lot of times, going back to the authenticity, really bringing in, I have a lot of clients that really love, a robust, authentic food and beverage experience. So, you might not be able to do the big, beautiful decor, and you might not be able to splurge on, the fire dancer, but you're able to incorporate local cuisine and maybe, extra action stations or curated cocktails or something along and mocktails along those lines to still bring the authenticity in.
Like that.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Another question that just came through, this was kind of touched on when we discussed budget considerations, but are there any new trends on the importance of gifting on incentive trips?
Mm.
I can take that. And feel free, Mike and Michelle, to jump in. I think going back to, and not to just sound like a broken record, but the authentic gifting experiences, we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of curated gifting that is very destination specific. And like I said, if you don't have the budget to do a nightly room drop, maybe that's a pre-trip gift that includes a nice piece of luggage or something like that. Or once you're on site, it's a curated gifting experience where you're getting an Italian leather handbag and you're getting your initials monogrammed. And maybe that's the only gift you give the entire time, but it's really curating those destination specific wow moments to make that budget seem like it's much bigger than it was.
Mhm.
Yeah, it
I
does.
agree.
Unfortunately, if we have any gifting partners on the webinar today, it does feel like that's been one of the most cut elements, unfortunately, which is probably just reactionary, but in that they're trying to protect everything else. But something that I believe is just good is rotating the genre of the gift so that it's not always sunglasses or flip-flops or apparel or electronics. In mixing it up, that way it doesn't it reduces the year over year value comparison of, oh, did we get as much this year? And variety is refreshing too.
Yeah.
So thank you guys. The next question that came through is what new places are we seeing for club trips?
Ooh, I can take that one. That's a great question. So I actually recently had a conversation with our amazing sourcing team here at Brightspot and went back through kind of what we've been seeing in terms of, places, destinations we've been sourcing and places that we are actually contracting for our clients over the next 18 months. And we've seen a shift in how far attendees are willing to travel to experience unique countries and cultures. So some of the top destinations that we've been sourcing for 2026 and beyond for incentive trips are places like an African safari, Tahiti with its iconic over-the-water bungalows, Fiji and New Zealand combo. It's that private island experience coupled with epic cinematic scenery. Iceland is still very hot for the Northern Lights bragging rights. Thailand is still a great value with lots of luxury accommodations, food, and culture. Marrakesh for that exotic luxury and those looking for an alternative to Europe. Another great combo, Buenos Aires and Iguazu Falls. You got that city energy coupled with one of the natural wonders of the world. Prague is still also very, very hot right now that we're seeing that storybook experience with charm, and of course, Budapest for those looking for wellness and nightlife kind of rolled into one. Of course, as we go back to the budget conversation, if it doesn't allow for long haul travel, there's still a really big value in staying close to home. Instead of Caribbean, why not consider Puerto Rico? That's been hot on the list. And then instead of Europe, what about the mountains in Canada? That's also been a destination we've been booking a lot recently.
I love a good
And I'm going to
mountain.
put in sorry,
Love a
Haley,
good,
go
no, I
ahead.
was just gonna say, I love a good mountain incentive. I think that's an
Yeah.
often overlooked option.
Agreed.
But one thing that Mike always preaches is, rotation. You got to do the beach, maybe Hawaii,
Yeah.
maybe mountains,
Yeah.
cold weather, Europe throw in there. So love a mountain destination.
Yeah, me too.
And I'll throw in a shameless plug as the marketer on the call for our top 20s list on our website. So if you guys haven't had a chance to visit our top 20 destination list, and our domestic list as well. Both of those are available resources on our website for more inspiration. The next question surrounding AI. How are you guys seeing AI being used for meetings and for travel?
We one of the things we didn't reference, I'll take this, I guess, this just as I jump in. The McKinsey has done a lot of interesting things that really talk about people are still at the beginning of the learning curve. They're still trying to figure this out. But we're all dabbling in it. Where there are things we've done to increase personalization of the web registration experience. We're trying to use it in that web tech area, or things like making even table assignments or networking suggestions among attendees that might share a common interest, or making suggestions of sponsor interactions, which the sponsors always want. But helping attendees identify the sponsors that could be relevant to theirs. I think the next frontier is the agentic AI, which I always have to scratch my head and think what that term really means and go back and ask AI what it means. But it's really doing the work. So things like we're trying to start using AI to match arrival departure manifest against rooming lists and make sure those sync up. Or one of our staff has used it to create a staffing schedule where the whole flow of our planning documents are by event, by day. It says, okay, now go through and pull that out by person and make a per person staffing schedule and where they're supposed to be. And that was fascinating, the amount of time it saved. So I think we're still in the exploration phase of trying to solve that.
Thank you, Mike. Another question that came through is, are there new trends from destinations or venues that are cutting additional concessions or getting away from offering, the typical concessions we see?
Hmm.
Phone our sourcing team.
I know, right?
Where's Jenny Castleberry?
Phone a friend. Phone a friend.
Yeah,
That's a great
and I'm not sure.
question.
I'm looking at that question too. If it's asking that I assume it means, are they giving additional concessions rather than cutting meaning reducing. But it usually seems like it's can be new hotels that have recently opened. They may be more aggressive, or it could be that destination that's trying to make a splash and hasn't attracted as much traffic as they'd like. So it does probably pair with what Michelle spoke about, looking at newer destinations, but it does take some digging to unearth those. I would make a plug for agencies like Brightspot or our competitors that have sourcing teams, because they can quickly use the CVent sourcing tool to send out RFPs to 20, 30, 40 hotels and uncover those bargains.
Mhm.
Awesome. Okay, great. I'll give everyone just another second if they want to type in any other questions. We did get a plug from one of our Tahiti DMC partners saying that Tahiti and her islands deliver authentic recharging incentive programs. So we'll certainly, as Michelle mentioned, we love an overwater bungalow here. So
I do agree. That was, I've been fortunate to go there, and that feels like one of a few places in my whole life where I felt like I was completely disconnected from the world.
Mm, yeah, that's wonderful. All right, y'all. Well, I think that will conclude our program from today. If we weren't able to get to your questions, we'll certainly have someone from our team reach out. We can help strategize and discuss further. Always would love to continue the conversation and help you guys apply these ideas to your own programs going forward. So thank you guys so much for spending time with us today, and we hope to connect with you again soon. Thanks,
Thank you,
y'all.
everybody.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.